starting to pay off. We're finally seeing what Microsoft has been spending all of its money on from some of its development studios. I just watched the Xbox Game Showcase, and I've got some thoughts for you. This is all going to be kind of off the top of my head. I had to go through the videos a couple of times, though, because there was a pretty good deluge of content to dig into. Overall, I was pleased with the Xbox Game Showcase. I think there's lots of really enjoyable software headed our way, but I do think that it was a little messier, this showcase, than what we saw out of the PlayStation 5 announcement. It felt a little less focused. I feel like maybe there were one or two games in this particular showcase that should have sat out, and we should have got a little bit more detail on some of the games that we were teased with. But let's get into it. Obviously, Halo Infinite is the literal big gun, and it looked cool. It doesn't look like photoreal, sort of gritty realism that we're seeing in Last of Us 2 or Call of Duty Modern Warfare. It's got kind of a cartoony aesthetic, especially when we're focusing on the character models, and I thought it was a little strange to wrap up a solid look at gameplay, the classic Halo vibes. There's a real sort of dependency on the pistol, which I thought was awesome, but then we wrap up with this boss monologue at the end, and we just have a lot of time to focus on this animated character model, which doesn't look like what we dream of what next gen is going to be about. And I thought that was problematic. There was nothing really behind the character. It was just the character's face, and it wasn't cool enough. And it was just like one of those generic, rough, raspy voiced villains with giant teeth. Looks all right for sure, but it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what you guys can tell me in the comments below, but it didn't really kind of evoke like, oh my god, this is the next gen and photoreal boss creatures and enemies that we're going to go out and kill, which I think was a bit of a deflating misstep to end the Halo Infinite trailer with. Now, the action in Halo Infinite looks terrific. There's lots of great auxiliary weaponry and special maneuvers. I like that they focused on the map. I like that there was also a sense of scale, although I did notice, you know, as Master Chief was riding up the elevator, there was a little pop-in element off in the distance, which I thought was weird to include that in the trailer too. This is supposed to be 12 teraflops of horsepower and just the, you know, the next level in state-of-the-art technology. We just shouldn't be seeing any assets pop in off in the distance. I think it's going to be a blast, though. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game to play, and honestly, that's the core of Halo. I do feel like there have been so many shooters since Halo was at the top of its game that have pushed the genre forward in lots of innovative ways, and aesthetically especially, and Halo has a lot more competition than it did when it first erupted onto the scene, and 343 has delivered some really fun, solid games, but I don't think they've ever kind of achieved the highs of what Bungie was able to do with Halo when it was under their stewardship. I hope that we get there with this. Now, I'm going to bounce a little bit forward into the presentation and talk a little bit about the fact that Bungie was also prominently positioned with new Destiny 2 content and an up-res version of Destiny 2 coming to Xbox Series X, and it's going to be part of Game Pass, and everybody's going to get all of the content running at 4K 60 frames per second that has been released up till September as part of Game Pass. That is a pretty damn exciting announcement, and yes, I know Destiny 2 has been around forever, but I thought it was a fantastic olive branch over to Bungie, and they also showed off the Beyond Light DLC that's coming to Destiny 2 later this year. And I don't know, man, it was really weird to see the bookend of Halo trying to recapture a little bit of the magic that it's had, and the massive success, this sort of cross-platform success of Destiny 2 was on the other side of it, that has transformed Bungie into an even bigger company than it was when they were at the heights of Halo. You know, and I'm not saying any of this to kind of charge people up. I'm as excited for Halo Infinite as any Halo fan out there, but it didn't blow me away. You know what I'm saying? Like, it looked like Halo. It looked like a modern repaint of what we know of Halo. It didn't, like, completely re-engineer it for me. And I think part of it is that we're starting to see almost photoreal stuff, like with Call of Duty and with The Last of Us. That sort of line between a television show or a movie screen and a video game screen is starting to kind of blur and blend. And Halo doesn't look like that. And I think that's part of the aesthetic quality of Halo in general. It's always been much more approachable and accessible, and it's always been incongruous with its M rating as well. I guess that's the sort of juggle that Microsoft and 343 are dealing with as they're transforming this property into next generation content. So, I mean, long and short, I'm excited. It looks good. It doesn't take my breath away like I hoped it would. But that's not to say that some of the games in the showcase didn't do that. I was impressed by the State of Decay 3 teaser, but I think it's going to become really important in this next generation that we're leading into to really differentiate if we're looking at pre-rendered cut sequences, in-engine cut sequences, or gameplay. It's going to become very confusing, and there are a bunch of titles that were shown off where it felt like, am I looking at what the game looks like, or am I looking at cut sequence type stuff? I enjoyed State of Decay 2. I thought it was a pretty cool game, and I didn't hop on board with the first State of Decay, so 2 was kind of a new reveal for me. I'm looking forward to seeing the embellishments and the tuning and what the horsepower of the Series X platform can provide for these developers. But I like that teaser. It looked cool. Forza Motorsport looks like it's going to be state-of-the-art and racy and super fast and beautiful. I like the fact that it was all in-engine. We've come to kind of expect that out of Turn 10. They get the hardware early. They get a real kind of sense and understanding of the technology. They really know how to stream beautiful assets in. They get all of these licensed vehicles, and they create a racing kind of playground for us that doesn't ever really disappoint. Forza's been a leader in racing for a long time, and I expect that that's what we're going to get when we get Forza on Series X. Probably the game that I'm most excited about from the whole showcase is Everwild from Rare. I love just flying through the Rare logo into the forest at the beginning of the trailer. I thought that was so cool and so evocative. I like the kind of gentle nature of the trailer as well. We see all of these magical beings working with animals to kind of coexist in a forest setting. It's beautiful. It looks a little bit like Breath of the Wild, like a Miyazaki type film, but with a layer of maturity on it. But obviously I don't quite know what I'm looking at, and I think that this would have been an opportunity to kind of show us a little bit more, but clearly it's not quite ready. I think this is a 2021, possibly 2022 game, but it was very, very cool. I hope that it isn't, not that I dislike Sea of Thieves, and I know it's been a great success for Microsoft and for Rare, but it's also another one of these games as service. You never, once you get in, you never get out type of games, which I know a lot of people love, but I like reviewing games and coming to an end with them and then moving on to another game. So I'm hoping that Everwild doesn't go on forever, although the name suggests that it does. So we'll see. Very curious, but I really like that trailer for Everwild, and man, I'm a fan of Rare. A trailer that really impressed me is Echo Generation, which is coming from a company called Coco Cucumber. It was revealed before the showcase during Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest pre-show, and it looks like Stranger Things. It's hard to get away from that. It's got kind of that synthy 80s aesthetic. You play a character with a baseball hat on and big curly puffs of hair, t-shirt, and creepy monsters. But it looks really, really cool. I just like the vibe and the feel of it. I think this idea of taking an 80s aesthetic from the video game world and kind of modernizing everything and 3D-ifying stuff that you would see in 2D is still really, really compelling. That's exactly where the developers have tapped into here. It's definitely got nostalgia streaked all through it and all across it, but it looks like it's going to be fun. It looks like we're going to encounter some great monsters and some great characters. I can't wait to play Echo Generation. Now, I was ecstatic to see the great focus on what Obsidian has got cooking up for us. Obviously, more content in Outer Worlds, which I just had a nice conversation about with Mike Williams from US Gamer and Sam Miskovich from Ars Technica in the last Vic's Basement that I put up. I love this game. I thought this game was the beginning of a terrific new franchise opportunity for Obsidian, for Private Division, and now, because Microsoft owns Obsidian, they can kind of take us to brave new worlds, and that's what we get. We get to visit this new area called Gorgon and meet all kinds of great robots and different characters and pick up new weapons and stuff. Very funny, very clever trailer. Now, obviously, the visuals still look a little bit contained. It doesn't look like it's using the full horsepower of what Xbox Series X can deliver, but what I'm hoping is that Microsoft takes a bigger partnership investment in this brand. Even though they didn't kickstart it, it was started from 2K and Private Division. Now that they own the studio, I hope that this is embellished and fostered and transported to like an ultimate visual reality. And honestly, the little taste of Avowed is kind of giving me a feel like that's what's going to happen here. Because Avowed, as much as The Outer Worlds is kind of a Obsidian take on Fallout, and of course Obsidian is famous for working on New Vegas with Bethesda, but a lot of the Obsidian developers are creators that helped to, launch Fallout in the first place as an old PC brand back in the day. And they're incredible writers. They're really, really good storytellers, and they really understand building massive role-playing experiences. And Avowed, even though we didn't really get a good sense of the scope of the gameplay, we just got a visual teaser. It's probably not in-engine, it's probably pre-rendered, but it looks beautiful. And the thought of Microsoft throwing lots of money, lots of Microsoft dollars at a studio with the storytelling chops and the role-playing chops like Obsidian to craft their kind of take on a first-person Elder Scrolls-like role-playing adventure is incredibly exciting. Happy that we're getting more Outer Worlds, and thrilled that Avowed was revealed. And they also showed off their smaller scale game called Grounded, which was pretty funny with its tongue-in-cheek kind of reference that the biggest game of the year is going to be Cyberpunk right at the beginning of their trailer. And then they showed off this Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of aesthetic in their trailer, with the idea that these little punks shrunken down so that there are huge, massive scale objects like giant soda cans and stuff like that they have to run around and avoid the giant spiders, of course. Always try to avoid the giant spiders. I always love the idea of having an oversized world around little tiny characters. I used to love that in the old Batman comic books back in the day, like the giant penny in the Batcave. So I'm fired up for this, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was always a great property, so it feels like it's ripe for reinvention in the game space. So yeah, I'm psyched for Grounded. So good showing from Obsidian. Very, very impressive there, and obviously a big pickup for Microsoft that I think is going to pay off in some pretty big ways. We got another deeper dive into Psychonauts 2 with a heavy emphasis on Jack Black coming up to sing a song from the game. It looks very psychedelic and very trippy. Again, Double Fine, they've been such a terrific indie developer for so long. Tim Schafer and his comrades over at Double Fine have always been able to do a lot with a little. Now let's see how they do with a lot. So that also puts big expectations on Psychonauts 2, and I honestly, I hope it turns out great. I know that the story and some of the trippy kind of narrative ideas are going to deliver some interesting food for thought, but I also want there to be some great new invention of gameplay mechanics in this one as well. Definitely fired up to check out Psychonauts 2 when it comes out. Another game that impressed me, although not right away, because it looked a little bit weird in terms of this kind of shrunken character model, but then I got to get a sense of what the concept is, and also to recognize who the developer is. It's Image and Form, who make the amazing SteamWorld games. They've got a game called The Gunk coming out. We don't really get a full sense of the threat that our character is going to face. It's an action platformer. It's a 3D experience, whereas SteamWorld has been 2D. Those games are amazing, by the way. If you haven't played SteamWorld Dig 1 or 2, check those games out. But I think it's cool that these guys are going into 3D mechanics. They're pulling a little bit from Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion with this kind of vacuum kind of concept where you're cleaning up the gunk all over the world. We've seen that kind of thing in video games before, but there is this kind of refreshing, retro, cartoony, steampunky kind of familiarity that we're going to need, even as we are taking steps into a new generation of game-making philosophy and strategy and photorealism. I think that these cartoony types of experiences that harken back to N64 days and PlayStation 2 and GameCube, that kind of era, I think that stuff will always work out quite well. I think we always need that connection, especially if everything is tuned and polished and tweaked and we have moments of visual brilliance. Those kinds of game offerings can be wonderful. I would also share a lot of those same sentiments with Balan Wonderworld, which is Yuji Naka's new game that he's working on with Square Enix. That was also shown off at the pre-show that Jeff Keighley hosted. And, it's a little bit cheeseball, but I feel like this tip of the hat to Knights and the Dreamcast on Xbox Series X is just so compelling and exciting. It's wearing its heart on its sleeve, the idea that you're changing costumes and you've got new abilities, and the world looks big and open, but not too big and not too open. It really looks like a polished Dreamcast game, which I think is totally cool, and it's going to come out next year. I think sometimes it can be a little bit risky to invest in something that looks a little bit dated like this, but I think the gaming industry needs that kind of frivolity and that kind of quirky escapism, and I think we also need some lighter stuff to change the mood a little bit in the world that we're in. There were a couple of interesting adventure games in there. Don't Nod's got Tell Me Why, which I think we can kind of predict the kind of gameplay that it's going to be. I love Don't Nod. I love Life is Strange, so I'm very fired up to see what they've got there. But also As Dusk Falls, which has this kind of living graphic novel aesthetic to it. That could be very fun and very cool as well. Definitely games that are less about open world exploration and more about sort of guiding you through a narrative and giving you compelling characters that you care about and believe in. But I'm psyched for both of those titles. Don't Nod is really leading the charge, though. Those guys are really becoming masters at chapter-based, interactive stories that tug at your heart and really get you to care about the characters. So, yeah, those are very cool, exciting announcements. I gotta tell you, I was very moved by Tetris Effect Connected. The minute that we got Alexei Pajitnov on screen and he's got his controller, and you just know right away that it's Tetris. All these blocks of people playing Tetris started popping up on screen, and Tetsuya Mizuguchi popped up in there. I saw John Riccardi. It was wonderful. It was a nice collage of people from everywhere, from all over the world, in front of their televisions playing a game, to beautiful music, and it was very touching. It was very effective. Almost the whole trailer is just people and their connection to video games and playing an Xbox game. It's a wonderful game. It's already been released on various platforms and in VR. Excited to see how it all comes together on Xbox Series X. But that trailer was perfect. I loved it. Very psyched for that. Another perfect teaser was something that we all predicted. Playground Games is making us a Fable, and it was so charming and so funny the way that it was announced. We have this little fairy flying around and a beautiful wooden area and this sword that's gleaming, and then, well, we see how it ends.
Not all stories have happy endings.
Which is typical for the kind of tongue-in-cheek humor that we associate with Fable. Couldn't be more excited about that, but of course we've got a long wait for Fable. And ultimately, I think that is the big takeaway from this particular game showcase. I don't think the pandemic has helped much, but we saw the cross-section of different studio brands. We know that Xbox has got a lot of stuff in development. We saw the Medium pop up again. We saw some free-to-play stuff pop up on there. Phantasy Star Online. It was a little bit all over the place, and I feel like we could have been a little more focused, given us a little bit more reveals and maybe a couple of interviews about what the scope is, maybe with some concept art on some of the bigger titles like Fable and Avowed. But overall, I think the future is absolutely bright for Xbox. There was a huge kind of movement within the showcase to punch up Game Pass and to tell people that you're going to be able to use xCloud to play a bunch of these games as well, so you'll be able to play them everywhere. It definitely brings up a lot of questions about why people need a console if they can just have a Game Pass account and they can play every one of the games that was shown off in showcase through streaming services or in other means on PCs or whatever. But I think the proof will be in the pudding when we actually see the price and we actually see the direct head-to-head comparison of a game running on Xbox One X compared to Xbox Series X, compared to xCloud, compared to PC. I think, they're going to deliver an incredible machine that's fantastically powerful, and they're going to also be revealing, they said that, some more information about what the future is for their different studios. And they have so many brands that they have acquired that I do believe that the future for Xbox is going to be fantastic. Does the Xbox Game Showcase that just happened today kind of paint that whole picture? Not quite. Should we be excited about Halo Infinite? Yes, we should. Is there going to be a lot of stuff at launch for us to jump into? Yeah, I think if you factor in all the upgrades to established games like Gears 5 and Ori, so, people jumping in will be able to fill their hard drives with lots of things to play, particularly, and this is what Microsoft wants, if you get this console and are also a subscriber to Game Pass, you're going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff to play. Do I think that Xbox Game Showcase was as solid and as powerful a punch as what we saw with the PlayStation 5 gameplay reveals? No, not quite. But then again, there's still a lot of questions that we have about what the PlayStation 5's future output is going to be. But you know what? Looking at what Sony put together for their PlayStation 5 event and what Microsoft has been able to put together for their third-party partners event and now this game showcase, I think it's safe to say we have a ton to be excited about. I want to express my gratitude to all of the developers that are working their butts off all over the place in work from home type situations, trying to, grapple with this new technology and hit release dates and keep that content flowing and that entertainment coming. We sure need it in this day and age. But yeah, a lot to be excited about. But you know what? I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you to all the EPN members out there. We'll be back soon with some new content for you. And until then, play forever.